Continuing here. So, yeah, to finish my sentence, you understand that there's nothing unreasonable about giving a cost of living adjustment. And if that means wages going down, so be it. But say, well, hey, your cost of living went down. That's a justification. Tough luck, right? You understand? So I just want people to understand where I'm coming from here. I'm trying to empower people. I'm trying to explain to people in the simplest terms that a child can understand the logic and reason behind what I'm saying. So, to finish what I was talking about, for all intents and purposes, if your cost of living stayed the same and your wages kept going down, it's the same effect we have with the minimum wage workers not getting commensurate, proportional, equivalent cost of living adjustments if their cost of living perpetually increases, goes up, inflates, right? Inflation, the cost of living. People think they just take it, they don't understand it, but they just accept it. You see, that's accepting tyranny. That's ungodly. We have to object. And if it doesn't affect you, in fact, it benefits you, you're good. Look, there's a judgment day. If you're an atheist or an agnostic, that's your business. You don't think you're going to have to be accountable. You just think when you die you don't exist anymore and nothing matters. It just is just all some weird fluke that we're involved in, and just eat, drink, and be merry, and frolic on God's green earth, and care about old number one and your own, and don't worry about other people. That'll hurt your head, and you just got, hey, that's their problem. Social Darwinism. I mean, it's every man for himself, and sinking ship. And hey, look, things are working good for me. Do what I did. You've got all kinds of advice, right, for the people that are just too weak and just too stupid and just too unlucky, whatever the case may be. It's their problem, not yours. You understand? And that it's okay in your mind. It just increases. The problem just keeps getting worse. And you rationally said, well, wait a minute. Minimum wage workers get raises. Right now they're causing inflation, those stupid minimum wage workers. I mean, so listen, friend, I mean, we're a family. And that's the only way you're ever going to find happiness. The grantor of happiness is none less than the Creator, God Almighty, whom, by the way, is all of our owner. He owns us. He's the potter. We're the pottery. Okay, and when he chooses to recycle the pottery, he can do that. He says, well, I've got to go refine it. This pottery didn't allow itself to be refined here. And so I've got to send it to hell where it's a lot hotter, and we can remanufacture it and let it try again some other time. But this is, you understand, this involves eternal salvation. Where we go from here. Because we're going to live forever. But you see, where you go, which path are you on? Are things going to get better for you in the next realm when you walk through that veil, when you walk through that door on the other side of this thing? Where are you going to go? You're going to have to answer for your belief system. So you understand the critical nature of having your head screwed on right as God dictates. He's the decider to tell you you got right values, you're invested in the right things. I'm going to bring you a semblance of joy and peace that surpasses all understanding. You're not going to understand how you can have peace in this crazy world run by, for the time being, temporarily, by satanic forces and all the minions thereof, advertent and inadvertent, okay, that are just establishmentarian status quo, these elitist hypocrites, and leading people astray and having you jump on the ship of fools and be entirely invested in it, in the bandwagon, and have that if you can't beat us, join us attitude. You're with that group. You understand where these people are got to go to that hotter place. These are going to be the pottery that gets destroyed by the potter who has a rightful, he has the right to destroy that wicked pottery and say you're not fit to live around the righteous pottery anymore. You understand? This is a big deal, understanding economics, understanding the nature of money and how it's been used by evil men. Cannot resist the allure, the power thereof, the control, and everything else that goes with money. It's the exemplification. It's the epitome of wealth and riches rolled up in one. I mean, it's a treasure chest, right? Because you can buy all the ingredients of the treasure chest with money, right? And in whatever sundry incarnation, manifestation that you find money, right? It'll get you anything you want. So that treasure chest that's filled with gold and silver bullion and every gemstone you imagine, pearls and everything else, right? That's precious to man. You can buy it with money. That's all you need is money. So you see how alluring and enticing and irresistible this is to people, that men that don't have their heads screwed on right, that don't have right values. These are Satanists for all intents. They're working against God. They're working against decent humanity. So about this minimum wage thing, do you understand? I want everyone to be very clear where I'm coming from. How wrong it is to not give commensurate cost of living adjustment. This would be the check and balance. This would be the oversight. This would be the accountability. This would be where the rubber meets the road. And then the employers would blame correctly, say, aha, now I see why. There was no shortage. The reason that these people's housing prices went up wasn't a housing shortage. Okay, somebody was manipulating markets. People were colluding, which is the same effect a monopoly has. That's why they're outlawed. You can't have them because then they can collude and conspire and they got you by the throat. You got no choice. You got to buy from them, like the company store. You understand? But in this case, we got collusion from the left and the right, from the liberals and the conservatives, from the Democrats and the Republicans, from those that profess to be socialists, from those that profess to be capitalists, because they all benefit. It goes to their side of the ledger. Yes, it's diluted money, but they get even more because if you boil down that diluted money, it's still got that concentrate, right? It still has a degree of buying power, right? So you understand, I actually have more concentrate when you boil it down, even with the inflation and the dilution of the currency, the debasement, the deworthment of the currency. You get what I'm saying here? So for minimum wage workers, just to stay even Steven, no advantage, they need a commensurate, proportional, equivalent cost of living adjustment. And remember, that could go up or down. It's tough luck. If it goes down, then they got to suck it up because the buying power of that minimum wage job stayed the same because their cost of living went down. So in a commensurate manner, they can lower minimum wage, and it's still worth more for making a modicum, an iota, a scintilla of progress. You get how this works? So there was a reason. Let's explore the reason why there was a need for this federal minimum wage, right? The reason is obvious, so that unscrupulous employers didn't take advantage of passive, weak-kneed workers out there that would accept chicken feed to survive, right? That would be happy to live on peanuts just to survive, because there's all kinds of those people in the world. You understand? And so this is something that the people demanded. They want checks and balances, and that's what minimum wage was. It was a guarantee that, hey, if you're willing to work, then you are going to be rewarded, and you're going to be able to afford a middle-class lifestyle. That was a minimum wage worker 56 years ago, in the early 60s, when America was great. Something Trump won't talk about. So I have a feeling that Trump could be, he's struggling with being an elitist, which is hard for these multi-billionaires, you got to imagine, and being a godly man that wants to go down in history as a we the people president, a really good president, a great president. So, I'm still going to support him, but I'm watching. I don't know if I'll vote for him. It depends on what he gets done. But it's got to be tangible. He's got to really be a thorn in the side of these governors and the mayors of these cities in California and around the country, wherever. See, the poorest people migrate to temperate climates where they can at least survive. They're not going to be trying to live in Colorado too much. You're going to die, right? The first winter, you're dead, sleeping outside. If the shelter says, hey, you're drunk, you can't come in, or you got a dog, I don't know. In those shelters, they probably don't reject anybody because they know you'll die out there. You understand? But they're going to die anyhow. They're going to get drunk and fall asleep, pass out in the cold, and die of exposure. I've seen it. It happens. It's a fact. So their option is, I met a cop told me he was from back east, and every year without fail, there was a certain group of guys that would go out and commit crimes, not because they were criminals, but because they were trying to survive. So they needed to commit crimes in order to get 3 hots and a cot, to be safely ensconced behind bars, essentially. You see, this is the reality. Get it through your head. You know how much that costs society? In California, I heard it's $50,000. From one guy I heard, he told me it was actually over $100,000 per inmate per year. Let me say that again. I got that right. I'm not misspeaking. That's per inmate per year. That's what it costs the taxpayers. And you wonder what's causing that national debt? Do you know how infinitely cheaper it would be to give people a UBI, a universal basic income, and circumvent and avoid people being forced to turn to criminality in order to survive? You say, well, that's pacifying them. I'm a fiscal conservative, so I say, I don't care how liberal that might seem. If it makes fiscal sense and you can lower your taxes because of it, I say, what are you, an idiot? You're going to cut off your nose to spite your face? You're going to shoot yourself in the foot so that because to keep your pride, because to win the argument that that's too liberal and I just can't go for that, giving away money? But that's the argument of these people. They're evil. People are largely evil. I mean, they're really not trying to look at this thing through God's perspective, through any kind of logical, reasonable perspective, right? Because God's perspective would be that this is God's planet, right? This is logic, reason. I mean, kind of a no-brainer. It's empirically speaking, it's like evident. And we're his kids. He loves us all the same, just like any halfway decent parent. They don't play favorites with their kids, okay? They're not really super generous with certain kids, select group of kids, and the other ones they neglect, as it is in this paradigm, right? No, this earth belongs to God, and all the resources, that's what makes the earth wealthy, right? The resources, and the greatest resource, the greatest asset is just a willing workforce, the minimum wage worker, basically, the productive class. But we're going to subjugate them. We're going to pick on them. We're going to marginalize them and exalt these others, unproductive ones, that say, hey, I'm great. I have capital. I have access to capital. I borrow money or I print money. Or I'm just smart. See, they're not smarter. They're just more aggressive. They're more assertive. They're more cutthroat. They conform more to the social Darwinian dog-eat-dog rat race philosophy, right? Doesn't matter whose toes you step on. You got to find success, or else you're nobody in the eyes of your family, your peers, your friends. You're just a nobody. So you got to make money at all costs. Money, remember, being the exemplification, the epitome of success, and having all that you want, right? What your little heart desires. And God's watching. The things that are highly valued among men are often detestable in the sight of God. In fact, I just read this passage. Let me read this from, what is this? This is the book of Luke, chapter 16. This is the parable of the shrewd manager. Jesus told his disciples, there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and asked him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer. The manager said to himself, what shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses. So he called each of one of his master's debtors. He asked the first, how much do you owe my master? 800 gallons of olive oil, he replied. The manager told him, take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. Then he asked, a little white lie there, right? Then he asked the second, and how much do you owe? 1,000 bushels of wheat, he replied. He told him, take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourselves, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. So if you have not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches? See, true riches alludes to the values, right? What are true riches? God determines that. God dictates that. God defines that. You've got to turn to God, and He'll pour it into your lap. So open wide. No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. The Pharisees, who loved money, heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. These are the people that were constantly trying to find ways to kill him. He was a threat to the status quo, to their authority. You are the ones, replied Jesus, who justify yourselves in the eyes of men, but God knows your hearts. What is highly valued among men is detestable in God's sight. Isn't that beautiful? So that is Luke chapter 16, verse 1 through, these numbers are really small, 1 through 15. That's good stuff, my friends. So, listen, do you understand? Did I get it straight?